He is already dressed to leave. Gloves on, helmet secured. The engine is running. Then someone nearby points to the empty seat behind him and asks a simple question. Can I come with you? There is room. The passenger foot pegs are there. He may even have a second helmet sitting in the garage. But his answer comes almost immediately. No, not this time. And from the outside, that refusal can feel personal. Maybe he is selfish. Maybe he does not trust anyone. Maybe he cares more about his motorcycle than the people around him. Or maybe he is one of those riders who simply does not like sharing anything. But watch what happens before he answers. His expression changes. His body becomes slightly tense. A ride that seemed simple a few seconds ago suddenly feels completely different, because a passenger does not add only physical weight to a motorcycle. A passenger changes the rider's sense of freedom, the balance of the machine, the margin for error, the level of responsibility, and sometimes the rider's entire psychological experience. So why can someone feel completely comfortable on two wheels, yet become uncomfortable the moment another person takes the back seat? When we observe someone who constantly rides alone, we tend to explain the behavior through personality. He is anti-social. She does not like people. He wants everything his way. Psychologists sometimes describe this as an attribution error. In ordinary language, it means that we often judge someone's character without seeing the internal situation shaping their behavior. The passenger sees an empty seat. The rider may see an additional life placed in his hands. The friend sees a chance to spend time together. The rider may see one of the few places where he never has to adjust himself for anyone. That difference matters. For many people, riding alone is not about rejecting company. It is about experiencing a rare form of complete autonomy. On the motorcycle, you decide the route. You choose the speed. You stop when you want. You turn around without explaining why. You can extend the ride by an hour or go home after 10 minutes. There is no conversation to maintain. No one asking whether you are almost there. No one becoming bored, tired, or uncomfortable. You do not have to entertain anyone or manage their expectations. For a person who spends most of the day responding to demands, at work, at home, and relationships, the motorcycle can become one of the only places where nothing is being requested from them. The road gives immediate feedback. Your hands move, the machine responds. You lean, it follows. Your attention becomes concentrated on what is happening right now. For a while, you are not an employee, a partner, a parent, or the person everyone calls when something goes wrong. You are simply the rider. That experience can be deeply restorative. Imagine someone who leaves home without a destination. At the first intersection, he chooses a road based entirely on instinct. 30 minutes later, he sees another route and changes direction. No explanation. No negotiation. No guilt. But the moment someone sits behind him, that private freedom becomes a shared decision. Now the ride has consequences for someone else. The rider has to think about whether the passenger is comfortable, frightened, cold, tired, or holding on correctly. Every acceleration feels different. Every curve becomes a form of communication. Every stop requires more attention. The passenger may believe they are simply coming along. The rider may feel that the entire meaning of the ride has changed, and then there is responsibility. When riding alone, a mistake affects you. With a passenger, the same mistake can injure someone who trusted you. That thought can create an enormous psychological weight. A rider who normally moves through traffic calmly may begin imagining sudden braking, a car changing lanes, a slippery surface, or a low-speed fall at a gas station. The risk may not have objectively increased as much as the rider feels it has, but the moral responsibility has. Now every decision carries another question. What if my mistake hurts them? This increases what psychologists call cognitive load, the amount of information your mind is trying to handle at once. The rider is already monitoring traffic, speed, road conditions, mirrors, distance, balance, and the motorcycle itself. With a passenger, the mind adds another moving variable. Are they leaning correctly? Are they tense? Will they shift their weight unexpectedly? Do they understand what to do during a turn? Are they about to panic? For some riders, this additional monitoring is manageable. For others, it transforms enjoyment into vigilance. And this reveals another important layer: control. A passenger may not touch the handlebars, but they still participate physically in the ride. Their weight affects acceleration, braking, and balance. Their posture changes how the motorcycle responds. A sudden movement at low speed can make the bike feel unstable. Picture a rider entering a curve. The rider leans naturally, but the passenger becomes frightened and moves in the opposite direction. Or the passenger adjusts their position during a slow maneuver. Or they suddenly tighten their arms around the rider's body. None of these actions has to cause an accident to create tension. For someone who feels safest when things are predictable, the passenger represents a variable that cannot be fully controlled. This does not automatically mean the rider has a problem. Some people simply function better when they understand every part of the system they are managing. On a motorcycle, that need for predictability becomes especially visible because small movements have immediate consequences. But avoiding passengers can also come from something much healthier than anxiety. Sometimes it is accurate self-awareness. A rider may be confident alone, but know that riding with extra weight requires different braking, slower maneuvering, and more experience. He may understand that confidence is not the same as competence, yet social pressure can make this difficult to admit. People may say, "You ride all the time. What is the big deal?" But a mature rider does not need to accept a task just to prove skill. Real self-confidence includes the ability to say, "I am not experienced enough to be responsible for you." That refusal may look like fear from the outside. It may actually be responsibility. The important question is not simply whether someone refuses to carry passengers. The important question is what emotion appears when the subject comes up. One rider can calmly explain that he has not practiced enough with a passenger. Another becomes immediately defensive, irritated, or overwhelmed. The behavior is the same. The internal mechanism may be completely different. For some people, the motorcycle is more than transportation or recreation. It is a private psychological space. After a difficult day, the rider may not want advice. He may not want to explain what happened. He may not even want to put his feelings into words. He wants to hear the engine, feel the air, and focus on the next curve. The ride organizes his attention. It interrupts repetitive thoughts. It gives him a sense that even if other parts of life feel uncertain, he can still control this movement, this machine, and this moment. In that situation, bringing a passenger can feel like allowing someone into a private ritual. The person behind him may be silent, but their presence still changes the experience. The rider is no longer completely alone with his thoughts. The activity that helped him stop monitoring other people now requires him to monitor another person again. Protecting that space is not necessarily selfish. Everyone needs boundaries. But there's a more uncomfortable possibility. Sometimes independence begins as freedom and slowly becomes protection. A person may learn through repeated experiences that relying on other people creates stress. Maybe cooperation often led to disappointment. Maybe depending on someone felt dangerous. Maybe being responsible for another person always came with criticism, blame, or impossible expectations. Over time, "I prefer doing this alone" can become part of an identity. I do not need anyone. I work better by myself. I trust my own decisions. That identity may feel powerful because it reduces vulnerability. But a passenger requires coordination. The rider has to communicate rules, explain how to sit, describe how to move, and trust that the other person will listen. At the same time, the passenger must trust the rider. That is not only a physical arrangement, it is an emotional one. Someone is placing their safety in your hands, and you are allowing their movements to affect yours. For a person who is comfortable with control but uncomfortable with mutual dependence, that can feel much more intimate than it appears. So the empty back seat may protect freedom, or it may protect the rider from vulnerability. It may represent good judgment, or it may represent an inability to tolerate uncertainty. It may be a personal boundary, or it may be a defense that became so automatic the rider no longer remembers what it is defending. This is where the real self-reflection begins. When someone asks to ride with you, what bothers you most? Is it the actual risk, the responsibility, the change in balance, the loss of freedom, or the fact that the experience will no longer belong completely to you? There is no correct answer, and the goal is not to pressure anyone into carrying a passenger. A boundary does not become unhealthy simply because other people dislike it, but it is worth noticing whether the decision feels flexible or rigid. Can you explain it calmly? Can you make exceptions when the conditions feel right? Or does the request itself feel like an invasion? One small experiment is simply to observe the first emotion that appears before the explanation. Not the argument you give other people, the reaction inside your body. Tension, irritation, fear, guilt, protectiveness, resistance. That emotion may reveal more than the word no. Now return to the original scene. The rider is beside the motorcycle, the engine is running. Someone asks to come along. He looks at the empty seat and refuses. From the outside, nothing has changed. But now the empty seat can mean many things. It can mean freedom. It can mean caution. It can mean that he understands his limits. It can mean that the motorcycle is one of the only private spaces he has left. And sometimes it can mean that being responsible for another person awakens a level of vulnerability he does not know how to explain. The back seat is not always empty because the rider wants people far away. Sometimes it is empty because riding alone is the only moment when no one needs anything from him. And sometimes the most revealing part is not that he chooses to ride alone. It is what he fears might disappear if someone comes with him. If you recognize yourself or someone you know in this, share your experience in the comments and subscribe for more videos about the hidden psychology behind everyday behavior.